because Twitter is dumb, and you should be using it. My name's Noah. I am a game jam addict. I've been doing games for like 5 years. If there's a way I can see this here. Oh well. I've been doing games for like 5-ish years, and I've been on Twitter since 2011, but that's not super relevant these days. Just that's how long I've been using it. Yeah, so if you don't know what Twitter is, Twitter's a reasonably popular social media platform. They have 313 million monthly active users. I couldn't find like just a total count for all overall users, but I'm certain that's in like the billions. It's notorious for their 130 character status update limit. And the really cool thing about Twitter, though, is it has a very instant global reach, and the site is built very well for generating and promoting viral content. Things can go viral very quickly on Twitter. And I like to think about Twitter as kind of a live stream because it's these like constant updates from everyone's lives. So why should you care about Twitter as a game dev? So there's a huge community on Twitter of both devs and consumers. There are literally thousands of people out there that are just kind of roaming around looking at art or looking at games, looking at GIFs and videos, and are always happy to give you feedback or interact or talk about, answer questions or talk about design. And there's a huge amount of accessibility as well. There are industry veterans, there are small other devs, and then there's you. Like you're accessible to your audience as well. Like if there are players that want to reach out to you, they can find you on Twitter and talk to you there. It's great for self-promotion because the more you share, the more eyes are getting on your work, the more chances that your content could go viral or that you gain a following from the content that you're producing. And then there's, like I said, a huge reach. There's the 313 monthly active users, and the platform is built for content to be spread very quickly. And then also, like, forums are kind of going by the wayside. IRC is kind of going by the wayside to Slack more than anything. But there isn't, a huge, like, there isn't one central or, even a small number of central points for the game dev community anymore. It's mostly migrated to Twitter. In fact, ironically, on Twitter, Colin Northway recently asked after this most recent GDC, he said, this GDC, I strongly felt there's a large movement of young indies that I know nothing about. Is there a cultural nexus I can visit? And ironically, he wrote that on the cultural nexus. He's just not following the right people or the right hashtags. And that's the thing is like, the place that you can find those new rising indies is on Twitter. That's where the community's at right now. There's a movement away from sites like TigSource, and then there's been other forums that have tried to start up in its place, but they haven't been super successful. So if you're interested now, if you're not, the rest of the talk's going to be pretty much useless on you. But if you're interested now, or you're already using Twitter, here's how you can kind of get started using Twitter, at least the way I do. A quick disclaimer, this is 100% personal experience from here on. I'm not like a professional at social media or marketing. And then also disclaimer too, there's some stuff on Twitter, like there's some features of Twitter that I won't talk about in this talk, mostly because they're the social media side. Like I don't think there's anyone that actually uses moments. I'm not certain, but there's features of Twitter that just aren't super, like they're not super relevant to you as a developer if you're trying to use it to self-promote or interact with the community. Cool, so here's the 5 essential things that I use every day to interact with Twitter. And you might be thinking now, wait, I thought there would be like one thing, like you just go to twitter.com, right? No, there's a million tools out there that you can use. These are just the 3 additional ones that I use outside of just the main client. The Twitter web client is perfectly fine for updating your site, your profile and updating your bio, changing your pictures and stuff. Twitter mobile app is honestly, I've never even used another app. I don't really see the need in that. And then TweetDeck is great for seeing a lot of content and managing multiple accounts, and we'll get into that later. Buffer, which is really good for scheduling tweets and managing content across multiple social media platforms. And then Twitter Analytics is great for tracking your analytics of tweets and accounts. And we'll get into all that in more detail. So let's start with Twitter.com. So on Twitter.com, that's where all the features are there. You can create and manage your account, edit your profile and your bio. You can view or stalk other accounts. You can post to your timeline or view your timeline. You can do the standard things you can do on Twitter. You can also direct message, which is the instant messaging system on Twitter. That's super useful if you want to get in touch with people in a more intimate way than like just tweeting with them publicly. You can find new accounts. They actually have a really good suggested accounts algorithm on Twitter.com. So if you go there and look at the suggested accounts, they do a pretty good job of suggesting new content creators to you. You can manage lists, which we'll get into, and view analytics, which we'll get into a lot later. So let's go ahead and take a peek at Twitter. And I think I have the page pulled up somewhere. There it is. All right, so let's take a look at Twitter.com. That's TweetDeck. So yeah, this is Twitter.com. You've got notifications where you can post your updates, and there's some things that you can do here that you can't do on other services. Most notably, like creating polls in your tweets, which is just like asking a timed questionnaire. I can change the length and ask a number of questions and see percentages and how many respondents you've had. That's the only thing you can do on Twitter.com and the app that you can't do anywhere else. I don't think they have an API for it. But other than that, everything that you can do here, you can do elsewhere. And I don't really prefer Twitter.com because you notice it says view new tweets here. I think they recently added a feature where it does live stream them to you, but by default, you have to click to update your timeline every time, which I find kind of annoying. And it's also a single stream timeline. You can only view this one. I could go maybe to my account and I could open up my lists and then go look at my lists here. But like this is a lot of work, and this is way out of my way. Like now it's multiple clicks and I'm at my art list. So like I don't find that the Twitter homepage is super good for anything other than really editing your profile, and that's actually about it, and finding new accounts to follow. So yeah, that's Twitter.com in a nutshell. Oh, actually, I did miss one thing, and that's the pinned tweet, which we're going to kind of look at in brief now, and then we'll go over a little bit more later. But one cool feature of Twitter, of like the Twitter web client and the app, is that you can also pin tweets. And so pinning tweets actually sticks them to the top of your profile. So whenever somebody comes and visits your profile, the first thing they see is this pinned tweet. And so this is a great place to promote a new release, or maybe just something cool that you're working on and you need maybe a mailing list. Like throw the link to whatever that is in your pinned tweet, because every person that comes to your profile, the first thing they see is that pinned tweet. All right. Also, note on your bio and your profile, don't just put like text in your bio. It actually is advantageous to you in the algorithms for accounts and for hashtags to put account names or like at other accounts in your bio, and also put like hashtags for things that are related to what you do. For a long time, I had game dev / indie dev in my bio, and I only recently took that out. And it was actually really good because you get a lot of people that will see you higher up in the game dev hashtag search on Twitter because of that. All right. So the mobile app is pretty much everything you can do on Twitter.com. The one cool extra feature you get is mobile notifications, which is just push notifications for whenever a account tweets. And you can specify which accounts you want mobile notifications for. I use them a lot. I have, I think, maybe 5 to 10 people on my mobile notifications list. And it's just because like that's content that I want to see immediately, and that I engage with those people frequently. So it's good to have them pop up right at the top, especially because of the fact that Twitter can very quickly become a fire hose of information. You can miss stuff all the time. All right, so TweetDeck. I just touched on the fire hose of content. Twitter is definitely not the fire hose. Twitter is like a trickle that you get to control. TweetDeck is the fire hose, and it can get pretty unwieldy at times. But the cool thing about TweetDeck is you can post from multiple accounts and post as multiple accounts at the same time. You can have an infinite number of columns of content that are live updated at all times. You can schedule content on TweetDeck, and you can see everything going on live. So let's go ahead and slide over to TweetDeck here. All right, so you can see, got BC's tweet here. We're going to go ahead and like and retweet that one. All right. So yeah, so you can see I've got these columns. It's kind of scrunched up on the screen. Let me zoom it out a little bit. Maybe. There we go. So you can see I've got these big, long, endless columns of information that update live. Right now, home is scrolled down so it doesn't update. But yeah, so you've got all these different columns, but they're very customizable. So like, for example, I can look at ROC Game Dev, or actually, let's go ahead and go over to hashtag search. So I can have a list of just the ROC Game Dev people, but I can also have a search for multiple hashtags. So here there's a number of them. Pretty much many game dev related hashtags that I've added over years of just seeing content and then adding the hashtag to the list. But if I were to turn off some of the filters I have on here, so let's turn off my engagement filter. It quickly becomes a crazy fire hose, and because of the fact that I'm streaming, it might not be super intense, but it can quickly spiral into just constant content just flowing through it. Sometimes TweetDeck will run too fast for you to even read the tweets as they go by. So I also have a lot of filters that keep a lot of content from coming up on top of these. But so what's cool about TweetDeck is it has a number of advanced filters that you can apply to your searches, to your list, or to whatever column you create that can keep that fire hose down a bit. So for example, on my game dev related hashtags, I've filtered it to 5 likes at the minimum before I even see it. So that way, it's things like spam that's just like download a free app, or spam that's like, just support my Kickstarter, and then there's 12 million support my Kickstarter posts thanks to Thunderclap. There's all these different just kind of noisy content that you don't want to see. So you're able to filter that out right away. And that's really good also if you're following live events, because you can set up a list for some live happening event, and then set it to say, oh, if there's only, if there's 10 retweets, then I'll see it, and anything below that I won't. Look at that, David just dropped took advantage of that live feed. So yeah, that's the big advantage of TweetDeck is the lists, and I've got a long, endless row. They can be reorganized however you want. So I can drag it over, maybe. You can drag these around. It's kind of hard to do from here. Okay, maybe. There we go. So you can drag these around and reorganize them and change. And it's really customizable. And so I've got this big, long, stretching list of things. I've got notifications for a different account I manage on one side, and then my scheduled tweets all the way over. I've got my DMs as well here so that I can handle those from within TweetDeck. There are some gotchas with TweetDeck, though. For example, notifications are generally slower than the main client. Sometimes you can see content pop up. For example, actually, Devin's post has shown up in the ROC Game Dev list, but is not in my notifications yet. So sometimes those streams can get out of sync, and most notably, your notifications will be slow, and your DMs can sometimes be slow. And so if there's something really going on that you need to stay up to speed with for whatever reason, there's been a couple of times I've had to switch to my phone, especially for DMing, where if you're having a conversation back and forth and it just starts slowing down, it's worth just jumping off of TweetDeck and switching to main client to do that type of stuff. I appreciate all the encouragement. Yeah, no, so that's really the big gotcha on TweetDeck, is that it's slow to post. Another big feature of TweetDeck, though, is the tweet scheduler, which is really cool because you can go in and I can say some hot content, and then schedule that to post, at, let's make it happen in a couple minutes. So let's make it 7:40. And then hit that. And so now that whether or not TweetDeck is running, I could close my laptop, go outside, enjoy the weather, and not have a care in the world because that tweet's going to go out whether or not TweetDeck's running, and that is going to go live. But there are better ways to schedule our tweets, and that's where Buffer comes in. Buffer has a lot of really interesting features. So Buffer is the power scheduler. You can set a custom posting time, an array of custom posting times, or you can generate an entire schedule based on your analytics data and your peak engagements. So it generates a schedule for you. You just tell it how many times you want to post in a day, and then it generates a schedule based on when the peak times for your followers are. And that's actually what I've transitioned to using almost 100% is posting from Buffer, and there is a notable increase in engagements because of it. It's got a built-in link shortener with analytics. I don't personally use it, but it's there. Big gotcha with that one is sometimes it'll gobble links. BC ran into that this morning. It'll sometimes eat your links up for whatever reason, and so I just don't really mess with it. You can post also across multiple accounts. So you can post to Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook all at the same time from the same post. I could write one post, add an image, add some hashtags, and then queue it for all of my accounts at once. And it'll go out individually on each of those accounts at the scheduled time for each of those accounts. So if I have different schedules for each account, it just automatically pushes it to the queue for each account, and then they go out at different times across the day. Buffer also has a really nice Chrome extension. You may have noticed on TweetDeck I had a Buffer button. So it adds to main client. See if I can get my mouse back over there. It adds to both main client and TweetDeck this button here that instead of going just through TweetDeck, it just takes everything you put in on TweetDeck and pushes it out to Buffer. And allows you to buffer it there. And so it's also got a web and mobile client. So if you want to post something on the go and just add it to your queue really quick, you can do that as well without even going into Twitter or without going into your web browser. So we can take a quick look at Buffer. So this is my Buffer. Actually, that tweet shouldn't be in there anymore. I thought I removed that from a queue. Oh well. So yeah, this is my Buffer. Yeah, there's one gotcha with Buffer that it sometimes just doesn't. Yeah, it's gone. Sometimes it just doesn't update quite correctly, and you just refresh the page, and then your queue is back together. But again, in Buffer, I can go in and say, here's some more hot content. Queue that up, and then it automatically adds it to the next posting time that was generated, and so that's 8:02. And so we can go in and look at my schedule that I have. These are my posting times. I have 8 times every day. If you've been paying attention to my good morning tweets, they're conveniently always at 10:08 a.m. And I try to avoid using Twitter until then, just because it's kind of weird to say good morning, an hour into your session on Twitter. But yeah, so I have these times that were all generated from this schedule, and I can go in if I wanted a new schedule. I don't believe it's this button, because this button, yeah. There is a button somewhere. Well, I can't find it. It's actually right in the middle of the page when you first get here. It's like, hey, use our power scheduler to generate it. I don't know where it got off to. But yeah, so you can go in and it shows you a graph and it says, here's your suggested time. I actually do want to find it so I can show you. Weird. They may have made it a paid feature. I may have slipped in last minute. Oh no. Well, I apologize then. I'll have to look that up. I'll post a little follow-up to this on that one, because I could have sworn I used it recently.
I just Googled best use of time to post on Twitter.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, you can also manually look at your analytics data. We'll get to analytics in a second. You could do it that way. Wouldn't be as accurate, but it works. But anyways, so yeah, that's Buffer. And yeah, like BC said, you can just go in and set up your own schedule. So I can add a time, and then it automatically just kind of randomly gave me one. So yeah, that's the basics of it. There are some gotchas on Buffer. There's a number of them, and they take a lot of time and a lot of painful process, because when you're scheduling tweets, you expect them to just go out fine, and you're like, okay, that's fine, I don't have to think about it. And then you come back an hour later and find out that the post that's been up for an hour is, broken in some way. Buffer compresses GIFs really bad. If you're posting any big GIFs, use TweetDeck and just use your buffer schedule. Just schedule it in TweetDeck and set it to a time from your buffer schedule. I've had a number of GIFs get really eaten by buffer because the Twitter API limits all GIFs through the API to 5 megabytes, but from Twitter main client, it's 15. And buffer just silently compresses your GIF until it's 5 megabytes and then posts it for you. Another gotcha is that suggested media will pop up when you're posting links. So if I go, let me see if I can put something in here. If I put like, let's put my stream. Ooh. Okay, so if I put my stream in here, it should suggest, yeah, so it says suggested media here. This image is more than likely, that is probably like its full resolution and scale. When it posts on Twitter, it's going to be weird and blocky, because all that buffer does here is it just pulls the thumbnails from the pages and suggests those as media. So if you have anything that isn't square or is bigger than this image, then just upload it by replacing link with photo or video here, or else you'll just get weird cropped images. So that's another gotcha. And then also the link shortener, which I talked about. So buffer might, if you had just set up your account, might convert this link to a buff.ly link. And that can gobble, like I said, that can gobble URLs sometime. You can just go into your settings and change it in there. They also have this analytics page, but it's sketchy at best as to whether or not it's actually accurate. For example, if I look at some old content, it doesn't really tell you your engagements. It just tells you your potential engagements, which is kind of or not even engagements, I'm sorry, your views. And it's sketchy at best because it kind of just looks at the reach of other accounts that have retweeted you or other accounts that have interacted with the tweet, and then just kind of tacks that number onto your tweet. So you can get weirdly large numbers sometimes. You can see Buffer apparently thinks that my potential is 1.8K. So any tweets that don't get a lot of action are just immediately 1.8K. But sometimes if it gets retweeted once, suddenly it's 5,000. And it doesn't really, there's no real science behind that. So I don't really use Buffer Analytics, but it's there. And there's a lot of stuff on Buffer that's behind a paywall that's pretty cool. And I played around with the paid version for a while, and it was nice. They give you a week free trial or something like that. And it's pretty nice. But for somebody who's even just running your own one person or even small indie studio, you don't need to have the business features of Buffer. All right. Twitter Analytics. Twitter Analytics is kind of just tacked on here because it's a good thing to keep track of and to start paying attention to. But a good feel for how analytics works comes mostly just from time watching your tweets and seeing how the impressions and engagements work out. But yeah, so Twitter Analytics is where you can track your impressions and your engagements, mentions, follows, all of basically the analytical data that is generated by your presence on Twitter is available to you to view. You can track everything globally across the board for I think their monthly averages and what the current month is at, and then also per tweet. So for each tweet, you can go in, you can click and see the analytics on it. You can also see audience data, which is kind of scary, and it's the market data basically for all of your audience. And you can see events that are upcoming that are very big on Twitter, and those aren't super relevant to games creators because there usually aren't big games events that show up on this board, but they're there if you want to interact on a specific hashtag or something, maybe the Super Bowl is going on, you want to know what the good hashtags are for the Super Bowl. You can go here and check because it'll tell you. So we can take a look at that. So yeah, here it is. So this is the homepage. I don't often go to this page. I usually jump straight to my tweets. But here you can see kind of rough averages for the month. And it's a little weird. So it's weird and sometimes inconsistent. These numbers seem to be a little all over the place. For example, I've simultaneously gained no new followers this month and gained 4 followers this month. But it's just, they're minor inaccuracies. It's on the larger scale, not terribly inaccurate. So yeah, you can see the number of impressions that all of my tweets have gotten over the past 28 days. You can see how many times I tweeted, how many people visited my profile, and that's how many people also saw my pinned tweet. And then also how many mentions I had, so on and so forth. And then also it highlights the top tweets, top mentions, shout out to BC. And like basically just general content that was your best content this month. For example, my top media tweet was this milk carton. So yeah, what I usually start out in though is the tweets dashboard, which you can get to. If you go to analytics.twitter.com, you can sign up for Twitter analytics for the first time. And then from then forward, it should show up on your account. I think you have to sign up for Twitter ads is how it works, but it's free. It's not, you just sign up as a ad account, which allows you to set up and manage campaigns if you want to, but otherwise it gives you access to analytics, and it's free. But yeah, so you can go in and look at how many impressions you earned, what days were the most popular. You get this nice graph. What tweets? So this is just tweets as they go, and then I can look at my top tweets for the past 28 days. So you can see like my top tweet in the past 28 days was a response to somebody else that's a little bit more popular and got retweeted by him. And then the thing is, though, you don't want to look so much at your impressions, because while those do matter, it does matter how many eyes are on your content. Engagements matter a bit more, because that's how many people actually care about your content. That's how many people like opened a link or actually viewed the image instead of just scrolling past the tweet, because that counts as an impression. If they see the tweet in their like on their phone as they scroll through their timeline, that's an impression. So what you really care about are those engagements, which is somebody actually acted on this tweet, somebody looked at it, somebody clicked through the link, and they give you a nice breakdown of what those engagements are from the tweet. So for example, this tweet garnered 11 profile clicks, that's 11 people that looked at my profile after seeing just this tweet, which was just a reply to somebody else. So that's pretty much analytics. I think I covered pretty much all of it. You can also, once you have it, if I go to like just twitter.com, if I go to any of my tweets, I get this nice little bar graph icon, and I can click on that, and that shows me a quick summary of the engagements and impressions, and also allows me to promote it, which is a fun thing. If you want to tell everyone what you ate across, multiple countries and in a promoted tweet. All right. So those are my basic toolbox. Is that a question right there?
Yeah, because I've used Twitter Analytics a bit, and I was curious, do you know why it is that sometimes what shows up on your top tweet will be a media feed that is just the one that got the most interactions, engagements, but then the top media tweet is a different tweet that sometimes is higher and sometimes is lower than the top tweet?
I can't tell you. I have no idea, actually. Like I said, Twitter Analytics can get weirdly inaccurate and kind of buggy at times. It's a good rough estimate, and it's the best tool you have to get that data because it's direct from Twitter. Everything else is just an aggregation of the Twitter Analytics feed. So I can't tell you why it does that. It just does. I once had a month where it decided on one day I got a bunch of like phantom impressions that just like I had no tweets that actually like generated that many impressions, but it decided that I had 200,000 impressions on one day, and for the whole month my numbers were just weird because of it. So like there's weird like things like that in like the 3 years that I've been using analytics. That has only happened once though. So I don't know. It's sometimes inaccurate, but it's the best kind of tool you have to get that data. All right, so here's some short tweet tips from me personally. Use media frequently, especially GIFs. You will get more engagements and you'll get more attention in general. If, for example, I'm on my TweetDeck feed, the tweets that immediately stand out to me are the image tweets, because those tweets are taking up more space and they have more things going on, especially GIFs. Like I see this GIF over here and I want to know what's going on, right? And I want more to take a closer look at it, and so I can go in and take a look at it. So that's the big thing. Use Use media tweets, but be careful if you also have a link in your tweet. So if you're trying to post a media tweet and you also want to post a link to your website, people can confuse or even miss the link that you put in the tweet. So if you put like an image on the tweet and also a link, make sure the link isn't the last bit of content in that tweet, because then it'll just get stacked on top of the pic.twitter.com link, and people will often just ignore that because it's just a bunch of blue visual noise below the tweet. I've seen differences between a tweet where I just put the link at the end in an image and a tweet where I put the link in the middle at some point and then an image, because people see it as they read it. Use hashtags, but be concise. Don't be, I bet you I can just find one by looking at game dev. Basically, don't be this person. Like, don't have 4 words in your tweet and then, 6 hashtags? This is even a light example of like what people will do. People will not even post a text and just drop a list of hashtags. And like, that's not content that people want to engage with. That's just you spamming as many feeds as possible. So use hashtags definitely, because they're great to get a further reach, but don't like spam a bunch of hashtags in your tweet. Don't overshorten things so they fit in 140 characters. Try to fit what you're saying in 140 characters, but don't be that person that just throws out all vowels so that you can fit the content. Like, either slim up the sentence or start a thread. It's perfectly acceptable to reply to yourself and add a little bit more to your thought. Just try to start thinking in 140 characters. Think about how you could convey the message that you're saying in 140 characters without just stripping out arbitrary letters. And also, I don't know how relevant this is since the latest update where they where they changed the reply features a lot in the mentions. But as far as I know, this is still relevant. When you're adding somebody on Twitter, so you are mentioning somebody specifically in a tweet and you start with their name as a mention, don't just drop the @ symbol and then say their name. Put a period in front of it or any character in front of it, because then it shows up in people's feeds that either follow you or follow that other person independently. But if you just put the @ it only shows up in feeds of people who follow both of you. And the reason that is because it shows up in Twitter's algorithms as a mention, not as a just tweet. But if it starts with a period, it's not a mention. They may, like I said, they may have changed it in the latest update where they changed mentions. Okay, so then they may have changed that at that point. I still use it. I see a lot of people still using it, so I would look it up. What did you say?
I think it's good form.
Yeah, it's still good form. Yeah, and that's the other thing is, like, if you're just scrolling through your feed and you see the dot, you know it's not just a reply to somebody else. But yeah, I guess that's one to look up, because I totally didn't. I've just been continuing to use it. And then so here's some hot game dev related hashtags that I recommend going through. Hashtag game dev, hashtag indie dev, hashtag indie dev hour, and we'll get to what the asterisk on that one means. Hashtag screenshot Saturday. Indie game made with Unity if you're doing Unity stuff. I know the actual Unity account trolls that a lot, and they will pull content from that hashtag all the time and retweet it. Unity 3D is another really popular Unity one, and I think Unity looks at that hashtag as well. Pixel art if you're doing that type of thing, Blender 3D. These are just ones that I know off the top of my head. There's a bunch more out there. There's some with more reach and less, and there are some services online that you can use. If you just Google like Twitter hashtag analytics, you can find a service that'll show you analytical data for hashtags and like how many users are tweeting on it, how many people are active on it. It used to be a feature in Twitter ads, and I couldn't find it when I was writing this talk, so they may have removed it. Twitter ads changes like every month. So yeah, those are just a few. The asterisks are Indie Dev Hour and Screenshot Saturday are both time specific. Indie Dev Hour, you can look it up online, but I think it's like 3 p.m. in the UK is when people tweet on that, like 3 to 5. So it's like midday here, or like early midday. I think, no, it's like 7 there. Anyways, it happens sometime in the early afternoon here. And so you can go and interact with other people, kind of forum style, where you just go and start tweeting on that hashtag. You're like, hey, Indie Dev Hour, like, what are you guys working on this week? Or, hey, Indie Dev Hour, here's what I did this week. You know, what are you doing? And you'll get a lot of responses because those are people who have set aside time to go and look and interact on Twitter during their day, to take time out of their day to talk about what they're working on and to talk to other people and give feedback and critique. And Screenshot Saturday, that one's pretty much a given. That's Saturday, post screenshots of your game. people will not post on Saturday often. They'll just kind of post around the period of Saturday. But generally, I mean, it's good form to follow that. I feel like I personally ignore pretty much any content that's on Screenshot Saturday that is outside of the predefined window of like midday Friday to midday Sunday. So yeah, those are just a few. And like I said, there's more out there, and you can look those up independently. And then so here's some of my last thought, hot Twitter power user tips. Pay attention to your analytics. See what content or hashtag combinations generate the most impressions and engagements. And don't forget that impressions aren't really the target thing. It's engagements that you're going for. Use buffer. It's great to spread that content out over the day and appear in as many time zones as possible, because you have to remember Twitter is a global thing and your followers are from all over the world. If you're tweeting from, just in mornings on weekdays, then everyone who gets up when it's 7 p.m. for you isn't really going to see your stuff in their feed. So make sure you're spreading that out pretty evenly. Use pinned tweets. Make sure that when people visit your profile, there's something there for them to see in your pinned tweet. Even if it's just, hey, this is me, here are my links, and just a bunch of links to all of the things, all of your web presence. That's totally acceptable. And actually, a lot of people do that. And it's just a nice directory to all your other presence on the web. Retweet yourself. This is totally acceptable as well. There's I feel like some people have a stigma for it, and I had a stigma for it for a while, or a stigma about it. But it's actually totally acceptable. And if you tweet in the morning and you want, maybe it didn't get enough attention, or you want to spread out the lifetime of that tweet a little bit more, retweet it for the evening crowd. Throw it back up on your buffer for 7 p.m. You will get more, it will get more attention, and no one's gonna call you out and be like, you're retweeting yourself. That's no. Nobody cares. We all do it. And quote tweet yourself. It's almost like adding another 140 characters, but it is a good way to kind of bump content without retweeting it normally. Just quote tweet it and maybe add an extra thought to it, or something along those lines. Interact with other people. Don't just use Twitter to shout into the void. If you're going to Twitter purely to promote yourself, you're not going to have a great time, because you have to get people interested in you. You also have to be an interesting person, and also somebody that is someone that people want to engage with. You can't just go to Twitter and be like, here's my stuff, bye, or check out my cool stuff I'm working on, and then disappear. There has to be engagement from you to other people. Almost all of my followers and all of my attention on my profile comes from me engaging with other people on the internet, other game devs, other people in communities that I am tangential to. Because when somebody scrolls through that tweet and sees my reply, or sees that creator or that person retweeted me or something, then they think, oh, this is another person that I might be interested in paying attention to. And then you have that connection because they go and look at your profile. Like I said, my top tweet had 11 profile views just from replying to somebody with my opinion of something. Use mute. So I didn't really talk about it that much, but you can mute accounts on Twitter. We can go and look at one real quick. So we can get it. There we go. So you can go in, and this is TweetDeck's profile view, but you can do this from the Twitter main client. It's exactly the same. And you can just go in, and I'm going to mute Devin here because I don't know. I don't need that kind of encouragement weighing me down. No, but I can go in and mute or block. And muting is very soft. All it does is you just don't see their content anymore. That's it. You don't see them mentioned. You do still see them mentioned, but you don't see their tweets at you. You don't see their tweets in general. You can mute people that you follow if you really just need to, somebody's going on a political rant or something. You're like, I'm not really feeling that. Just mute them for a little bit and make a note of it and unmute them later. What's that, David? No, they aren't. No, it's a silent thing. It's basically shadow blocking. And blocking also, there's no notification. So if there's somebody that you're like, I absolutely don't want to see any content related to them, that's where block comes in. But yeah, mute is totally fine to use. And there's a lot of bots out there. I have almost every game dev bot imaginable muted. And every time I see a new one, I just mute it. And that clears up a lot of the noise in your notifications, because then you stop seeing every time you tweet on hashtag gamedev, you don't get 6 immediate notifications because you got retweeted. It's just you see the actual engagements. And then also, you can log off at any time. Social media is stressful, and like there's always a lot going on, especially on Twitter. Like I said, it's a fire hose. So you can log off at any time. Like taking a break is fine. The world isn't going to crumble if you disappear from Twitter for a week. Your social media empire won't disappear. So like don't stress yourself out over it. It's at the end of the day, it's just Twitter. And your mental health comes first. So that's my quick primer on Twitter and my quick overview of how I interact with Twitter. Does anyone have any questions? What's up?
Retweet yourself. I think I heard you frame it. I heard it 2 potential ways. One was straight up retweet yourself, so you get a one-time bump.
Yeah.
And the other way I thought I heard was schedule it again in buffer, so it's a carbon copy of the original tweet. Is that what you meant? Or?
Oh no, I just schedule. The question was when retweeting yourself, like I mentioned, just immediately retweet it so you get that bump, or schedule it in buffer. I didn't mean so that you create a copy of it. I meant just schedule the retweet in buffer, and then you can also schedule your quote tweets in buffer as well. So like if I were to retweet myself here, I can buffer just the kosher tweet and just say this is going to pop back up at, I think my next posting time is like 10. When buffer eventually loads. So I can quote tweet it and have it show up with an additional note, or I can just retweet it now and hit add to queue and it'll pop back up. You can also from buffer rebuffer tweets. I personally prefer to rewrite tweets a little bit different each time. I don't like the idea of somebody going to my timeline and just seeing like 3 of the same tweet like over and over. And that's the other thing that retweeting solves, is that when you retweet yourself, it doesn't bubble back up on your timeline. It just bubbles back up on everyone else's timeline. So it doesn't show up like you're just copying and pasting tweets over and over.
I'm curious about, I see you doing this, and I've done it a couple times, but I'm not really sure how it works. It's like the utility of replying to yourself.
The question was on just the utility of replying to yourself. It's mostly like if you want to do a long form thought of something, it's a good way to do it, because you can still, especially if you're somebody who uses Twitter a lot and you just start thinking in that 140 character like format, you can get out a lot of quick long form thoughts and just like in a stream. And also it allows kind of these short snippets, like quotable snippets, like all the way down, that people can just pull out and retweet individually if they feel like. Because like there was one time I went on a whole rant about crunch, and like the third of the way, or like 2/3 of the way through, that tweet was the only tweet that got picked up. People ignored the rest of the chain and retweeted that, but like you're getting out a bunch of related tweets that tell a whole story.
So the other day I went on this kind of slightly political rant, right? And the media or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I originally tweeted it. I just started writing the tweets. I was like tweet. They were all related to each other. And I'm like, eh. So then I started replying to the original. Like the original
Mm-hmm.
was like the thesis or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, what I kept doing was replying to the original tweet.
Mm.
So like, do you do it as like a series where you tweet, reply to yourself, and then reply to that reply, or does it even matter?
So I've seen people tweeting and replying to the original tweet only when you create a thread. I've seen people do that. I don't personally, because it's easy for them to get out of order. When I tweet in a thread, generally they follow an order, and for me it's nice to have them in the context of where they are in that stream of thought. So when you click through, it'll show the next tweet in the chain and the previous tweet in the chain if I've replied to the most recent tweet in the chain. If I've replied to just the original tweet, it shows all of them in order if you click on the original tweet, but it does not show all of them in order when you click on any of the subtweets.
But if you click on the original tweet, you don't see the whole series of things that you replied to. Is that correct?
Either way, it cuts them off. It will cut them off either way, because it only shows so many tweets at once.
As of the most recent update, at least, if the thread is too long, it will cut it off at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But if you click on the original tweet, it will show as many of the replies as it's willing to before it cuts them off. It won't just show just the first
Yeah.
one after.
Yeah. So it's whether or not, for me, I think it's like whether or not you want them in order, and then what visibility you want. I think both methods are perfectly fine. I personally just reply to myself every time. What's up?
What's hashtag easy feedback?
What's hashtag easy feedback? Easy feedback is my, ooh, let's see if I can get there. Easy feedback is just a asset that I released on the Unity asset store that takes player feedback from in-game and sends it off to Trello. But that's just, you can create your own hashtags by just appending hashtag to the front of anything. So I just created that as like a constant, like this is a central source for like all the information on this asset. What's that?
Is there a hashtag or some group of people on Twitter who will exchange feedback?
Indie Dev Hour is really good for that. Screenshot Saturday is moderately good for that, depending. It's easy to get lost in the sea of content on Screenshot Saturday because pretty much everyone uses that one. Those are the two ones that I use. Other than that, it's just grow. I have a community enough of people that I follow, and that we mutually follow each other, and that we can kind of comment on our own stuff and talk about it. So I think it's 50-50. You find hashtags and find people through like Indie Dev Hour and Screenshot Saturday, and then those people will follow you outside of the hashtag and start replying to your tweets and giving you feedback.
Another thing to do is use ROC Game Dev.
That's true.
That puts you on the ROC Game Dev website. It actually shows up on the page, and we all follow it. So I always get a lot of feedback. And then sometimes you get retweeted by Peter Lazarski, and you get all kinds of things.
I've had a lot of success with gifts on Screenshot Saturday. Because I'll just post the gifts and say, hey, thoughts. It's typically my work too, so it's fun together. But I'll post something that's in process, that sort of success.
Yeah, you can also use the hashtag ROC Game Dev. I forgot to throw that one on my slide. That's silly. There's also I should promo this. There's also a list that I manage, the ROC Game Dev list, which is everyone who's doing stuff related to games in Rochester. Just send me your handle or just like follow me. And if you say somewhere in your description that you're doing games in Rochester, then I'll throw you on the list. Or I think if you're on the Discord and you post in the directory, I'll go through and add some more people tonight. But yeah, if you feel like you should be on there and you're not, just let me know.
How would somebody add that list to like?
Yeah, so to add other people's lists, you can go and I can't do it to mine, obviously. But when you go in, so you go to my profile, and you can go. Go straight to the source. You can go to my lists and you can subscribe to my lists, and then those will appear in your lists throughout the rest of the site. So you can go and you can say, I've got 14 lists. Most of them are Game Jam related. But yeah, you can go in and find the ROC Game Dev list, and then there's a subscribe button. And when you subscribe to the list, it will show up in your list of lists. There it is. I can post a link to this specific list on the Slack also. Or the Discord. Oh, don't remind me. Okay. So I can get back here. All right. Any other questions? BC, what's up?
Can you talk a little bit about your personal workflow? Like, for example, you mentioned your good morning tweets.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sit down one night and schedule a week's out, or do you just kind of do them whenever?
I do them usually when I'm on my way to work every morning. I open up the Buffer app and I'm walking to work and I just bang one out every morning. I prefer, like I do every day at noon, I post my 3D daily, and that's just a 3D model that I make every day. And like I do those the night before and queue those up the night before, because that's a little bit larger amount of content and work to put out. But stuff like just saying like, hey, good morning, like that I do it in the morning at the day of. And then otherwise it's just content as I think of it or see it in the day. I'll add to my buffer and then kind of let that play out as it does. So like if there's something that I want to say in the moment, I just throw it on top of my queue on buffer and maybe reorganize the queue if I feel like I want it to go out sooner. For stuff that I'm like promoting, so when I was like hardcore pushing easy feedback for a while there, that I do generally schedule. I'll pop a bunch of them. I'll usually look at the buffer suggested schedule and then just schedule them with a custom time based on that, because buffer only queues them. You can only add in a queue. You can set specific times outside of that, but you can't say post on this specific slot. You have to have enough content to push it to that specific slot in the day. So I'll just schedule it to whatever time. What's up?
So things like Crowdfire.
Mm-hmm.
I used it for a little while. There's this function where you can like plug in somebody's Twitter handle and show all their tweets. You can just follow them. So I used it to like follow similar people.
Yeah.
It felt a little slimy, but it was like it did get me a decent amount of followers. But you know, like the engagements with them are not there all the time.
Yeah.
I would say like 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
You know, maybe.
I would actually, I used to use Crowdfire. The question was specifically about using Crowdfire to find people, like to follow other people's like followers and get following from that. I used to use Crowdfire. I stopped because they updated the app, and it's like the one feature I used in it is like basically unusable now. But I used to use it just to keep track of stale followers. If like or if I'm like following somebody and they haven't posted in 6 months, like I just pop them off I unfollow them. But like that was the only thing I used it for. Crowdfire has a bunch of suite of tools, or is a large suite of tools that does a bunch of social media management, but it's mostly like it's ways to boost your follower counts almost artificially. And I don't see any use in that because those followers don't care about your content. They're only following you because they think follow for follow is something important, or that their follower count should be high, and it's cool to have 3,000 followers and also be following 3,000 people and never be able to use Twitter because it's just constantly scrolling past or you can't see anybody you actually care about. Those are just raw impressions without engagements. And again, like BC covered, like that's not really the point, and that's not really doing much productive. I mean, if you want to feel good and go to your profile and be like, wow, 4,000 people, look at my tweets. You can say that, but 4,000 people probably don't care about your tweets. They probably accidentally saw it when they opened Twitter to post their tweet. So that's the one thing to keep in mind with like follow for follow in general, is like gaining followers by just following other people doesn't always work out because those people likely don't actually care about what you're making. What's up, David?
So have you found people on Twitter that you end up engaging with, like about game dev, that you like didn't know otherwise? And if so, like, how do you find those people that you're likely to kind of hit it off with?
They just kind of come. So to find people that I engage with on Twitter, mostly game dev related, like that I don't know in real life, they kind of just come out of nowhere. Like there's a number of people. There are people that I've been interacting with on Twitter regularly for upwards of 3 or 4 years now, that just kind of appeared, started following me, and like were replying to stuff, and we started having conversations, and then we just kept having conversations through Twitter for years. But mostly I've noticed that those types of people are attracted to, like if you're trying to find new people to engage with, interacting on like Indie Dev Hour is a great one, because that's really personal. It feels a lot closer than it is on Indie Dev Hour. There's a few hundred people using it for a couple hours, but it's the same few hundred people, and so you see the same usernames and same avatars over and over. Screenshot Saturday is kind of good for that. Other than that, stick around in other people's mentions often, and then you'll just start interacting with their followers, and then you'll start to get some cross-pollination from their followers as well. So I think it's just keeping up with producing, like, at the end of the day, like being an interesting person and then being an interesting person outwardly is the big thing. Like, don't just, again, post to the void, reply to other people, engage with other people, because those will drive engagements towards your account as well. So how to ensure originality and how non-verified users can improve ownership. So that's kind of tricky, and Twitter is notoriously kind of bad about like moderating stuff. They've gotten better-ish lately, but I mean the best thing you can do is there is a way to like petition, like if you think something's false, there's a way to just report that account and petition it as false. Or if there's something that is your property that was stolen, like if somebody created an easy feedback account, for example, and I was like, hold on a second, that's my brand and that's my name. You can go in and report it, and Twitter will eventually, hopefully, take it down. But like that's the best you can hope for. And other than that, just making the delineation for yourself. If you're just concerned about is this a real account or not, making the delineation for yourself, and just I guess a healthy amount of skepticism on the internet in general is the best you can do.
On the flip side, do you think, is there anything that you can do to prove that like it's your content if you're putting it out there?
To prove that it's your content, again, I think it's mostly just being as genuine as possible. And I guess that's kind of a tricky one. I've never had to deal with somebody impersonating me or any of my properties, so I wouldn't know like personally firsthand. But I think the biggest thing for me is like if I'm suspicious about an account, I'll go and look through some of their older tweets, and if like they're just constantly pushing the same message over and over, I'm less likely to believe that that's a real person behind that account, and more likely to believe that's a bot or that's an account that was trying to take over somebody else's name or brand. So like I guess don't just post advertisements for your stuff to Twitter. Post actual content. Like I throughout the day will just post idle thoughts or whatever, because that content also like proves that you're kind of a real person. Also, posting tweets that are like actually, almost fishing for engagement, but like you're genuinely interested in something. So like if you have a genuine question, or you genuinely want feedback, or you just think something's cool and you want to start a discussion, like tweet those things. Even if nobody replies, that's showing that you are interested in engaging with people and not just dumping to the void again. And so I think that's the best way to appear genuine in general, is to genuinely want to have conversation. Any more questions? Awesome. I think that's it.
Cool. Thanks, Noah.
Yeah.